It feels like it takes forever to get to the NFL season, but my God, once it gets going, it seems to just fly by. We're already through week 2 of the 2022 season. I know, right? I'm telling you. Like, before we know it, we'll be talking about the playoffs, and then I'll be making predictions about who's going to advance in the playoffs, go to the Super Bowl. So time just flies by once you actually get to the season. So let's take a look back at the week that was, week 2 of the 2022 NFL season. It all started on Thursday night with the debut of NFL football on Amazon Prime, their $1 billion a year investment that we'll see how much it pays off. Looks like a lot of people did not enjoy the experience at week 1. For me, it was kind of It was all right. But as far as the game itself, Justin Herbert's pick 6 in the fourth quarter was an absolute backbreaker for the Chargers. The Chiefs used 13 fourth quarter points to ultimately top their divisional foe 27-24. Meanwhile, speaking of killers, Justin Herbert with the injured ribs sitting there on the sidelines trying to avoid the team doctor at all costs. Asked Tyrod Taylor about that. Switching over to the Sunday action, you could blame Nick Chubb for scoring a touchdown, but that's dumb. Blame the defense that gave up 2 touchdowns in less than 2 minutes. Blame the freaking special teams for not recovering the onside kick. Blame the defensive coaches. Blame the head coach, Kevin Stefanski. Those are the scrubs that you need to be focusing on, not Nick Chubb. Somehow, Joe Flacco and the Jets come back to win on Sunday 31-30. The Lions roared to a 22-0 halftime lead. Jared Goff had like 4 touchdown passes. Carson Wentz tried to bring his team back in the second half, but the Lions had enough to hold off the Commanders 36-27. Tom Brady and the Buccaneers finally got a win over the New Orleans Saints. The Bucs defense forced 5 turnovers. Was an ugly game. You should have just let Mike Evans and Marshawn Lattimore have a death match and determine who won this game. Probably would have been more interesting to everyone. Bucs beat the Saints 20-10. Baker Mayfield is still mid. Gee, imagine that. The Giants used 2 50-plus yard field goals from Graham Gano in the fourth quarter. And wouldn't you know, Brian Daboll has the Giants at 2-0. They beat the Carolina Panthers 19-16. And boy, that seat for Matt Rule has to be nuclear hot right now. Pittsburgh fans, you're finding out about Mitchell Trubisky. It took some Bears fans 4 years, and some of them still haven't come to the realization. Well, that's because they're dumb. You've been around more winning football. You know what real quarterbacks look like. Don't be dumb. Mitch is exactly who Mitch is. Don't kid yourself. You're finding out. The Patriots had enough to hold off the Steelers 17-14. And you know, maybe there's a reason Atlanta was so desperate to move on from Matt Ryan, because maybe he's washed. It was a rough day for him. He threw 3 picks, and lo and behold, look out. The Jacksonville Jaguars beat the Colts. They shut them out 24-0, and it's the Jags under new head coach Doug Peterson that are in first place in the AFC South after 2 weeks. Who'd have thought that, huh? Imagine you're down big in the fourth quarter, and then your quarterback goes off for 4 fourth quarter touchdown passes. It must be nice. Dolphins overcome a 21-point deficit. Think about that, 21-point deficit, 4 fourth quarter touchdown passes. The Dolphins come back, beat the Ravens 42-38, and what it was a hell of a game for sure. Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp connected for 2 touchdowns, and the Rams got out to a big lead and then just coasted in, beating the Falcons 31-27. But hooray, Falcons, for the backdoor cover. Jimmy G replaces an injured Trey Lance, who is out for the season with the broken ankle. And the 49ers coast easily over Geno and the Seahawks 27-7. Maybe the Bengals should ask for a refund on their offensive line investment, because through 2 weeks, not so good in a game the Cowboys really, really needed to have. They got it. Cooper Rush was okay. The Cowboys' defense was great. Cowboys win 20-17. The Broncos rebounded in the fourth quarter with 10 unanswered points and come back to beat the Houston Texans 16-9. Let me restate that. A team that gave up all of that to trade for Russell Wilson had to come back in the fourth quarter to win over the Houston Texans 16-9. Let that sink in for a moment, shall you? The Arizona Cardinals used some Murray magic in the fourth quarter to force overtime, a couple of late touchdowns and successful 2-point conversions. And then there was the Byron Murphy fumble return for a touchdown. And what did you know? The Arizona Cardinals come back from the abyss of death and beat the Raiders in overtime 29-23. The Packers defense stiffened up, and Aaron Rodgers still owes the Chicago Bears, but let's cut the crap. It was Sunday Night Football. It was Packers versus Bears. You knew what all of America was going to see. Bears football! Should have known better. Even me thinking the Bears could cover the spread, ridiculous. I know better. That's what I get for trying to give even the least bit of positive credit for this team. Packers rolled 27-10. At this point, the Titans might as well start Malik Willis, because if that's the type of egg you're going to lay on Monday night, what the fuck is the difference? And Titans fans, you need to come to that realization. Tannehill's not that guy. You're already 0-2. Like, at what point in time do you need to start finding out if Willis can be the guy, or if you need to move in an entirely different direction next offseason? Yeah, I know it's only 2 games, but you just got boat raced by the prohibitive favorite in the AFC in the Buffalo Bills. Like, that was embarrassing. You literally could have done the same thing with Malik Willis. Bills rolled easily 41-7. And then the other part of the Monday night doubleheader, you had Jalen Hurts with 2 rushing touchdowns, another throwing touchdown, and the Eagles end up beating the Vikings 24-7. In terms of some of the winners and the losers from the week, winners, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're 2-0, and they got a win over the Saints. You know, it wasn't the prettiest thing for sure, but, you know, not so bad for them. Like, they'll take it. And then sometimes it's not always going to be pretty where you win. Hey, the Jags, you got to look at them and say they're 1-1. They're in first place in their division. It was a good win for them over the Colts on Sunday. I mean, they shut them out. So, some reason for a little bit of hope and optimism early with the Jags. And then the Dallas Cowboys, it's your first game without Dak Prescott. You're going to be out without him for several weeks. You're taking on the defending conference AFC champions in the Cincinnati Bengals. And your defense was overpowering against that Bengals offensive line. Again, they need to ask for a refund. It was a game the Cowboys absolutely had to have, especially if they hope to keep pace with the Philadelphia Eagles in that division. And shit, at this point, right now, at least early on, the New York Giants as well. They had to have it, and they got it. So it was a big win for them. In terms of the losers, I look at the Cincinnati Bengals. You're the defending conference champions. You want to talk about Super Bowl losers hangover, Super Bowl losers curse? Well, here you go. Invested a ton in their offensive line. Should be asking for a refund. They're 0-2, and they've looked bad doing so. I look at Nathaniel Hackett. More game mismanagement, and the fact that you were playing the Houston Texans and you have Russell Wilson, invested all that to trade for Russell Wilson, and you ended up only scoring 16 points, and you had to come back in the fourth quarter in order to beat the Houston Texans. This has not been an good early showing for Nathaniel Hackett at all. And then I look at the Tennessee Titans. Again, you got steamrolled, boat raced on Monday night coming off of the loss to the Giants in week 1. Now you sit at 0-2, and you got embarrassed on Monday night. And furthermore, while the one good thing about it was that football viewers like myself could just flip over to the Eagles-Vikings game and forget all about that one. The problem is you got to live with that bad blowout loss. And all the while, you could have just done the same thing with Malik Willis. That's all I'm saying. In terms of the stars of week 2, in terms of quarterbacks, you got to go with Tua. Like, Dolphins fans, calm your tits just a little bit, because Mitchell Trubisky once had a 6-touchdown game. So, don't put the cart before the horse here too much. I'm not trying to rain on your parade. I'm just trying to be realistic here. That said, that was an incredible fourth quarter performance by him and that team. You know, to go 36 of 50 for 469 yards and 6 touchdowns. Like, if you were a Tua believer, this was the type of game you point to and say, that's the type of talent that he has. That's the type of ability that he has to rally a team. Of course, then you look and you say, well, why were they 21 points behind in the first place? Just saying. In terms of running backs, Aaron Jones, 15 carries, 132 yards, and a touchdown. Then he had 3 catches for 38 yards and a receiving touchdown. He was a big part in why the Packers were able to coast comfortably and easily, again, over the Bears on Sunday night. In terms of wide receivers, like, there are several places you could go. You could certainly go with Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle. Like, you can go a lot of different ways here. I'm going to go slightly different, though. You know, no offense to the Stephon Diggses of the world and so forth. I'll go with Amon-Ra St. Brown, because you got to figure he did what he did in week 2, and he's got Jared Goff as his quarterback. He had 9 receptions for 116 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he had a couple of carries, ended up with 68 rushing yards. Like, for a guy that's a 4th-round pick, it just goes to show you He should have never been a fourth-round pick. Just how many people involved in the NFL don't know what the fuck they're doing, and how guys can be caught up in their draft position, or they could go out and make other teams regret allowing them to get to that point in the draft. And hats off to Amon-Ra St. Brown, because at least the Lions can say, you've got one dude at the wide receiver position. In terms of defensive units and defensive performances, I'll go with Darius Slay. Had a couple of picks, a couple other pass breakups. Was great against Justin Jefferson on Monday night. This is a guy that you needed to step up and play big against a marquee, legit, elite wide receiver, and he did just that. So, wanted to make sure I gave him his flowers, if you will. From a coaching standpoint, who's the star of the week? I'm going to have to go back to Brian Daboll again. He's got the Giants at 2-0. It's not pretty. Eventually, their lack of talent is going to catch up with them, but win's a win. Finding different ways to win, he's got that team at 2-0. And as I come to the end of this recap, my 2-minute drill, I want to talk about the importance of helping your young quarterbacks. And you look at the Miami Dolphins. Now, I am still not 100% convinced that Tua is a franchise quarterback, but maybe he is. But here's what you know, is that the Miami Dolphins have put in a significant amount of investment in the pieces and talent surrounding Tua Tagovailoa, to the point that if he becomes that dude, he actually has a chance to become that dude because of the help that he comes around him. And if he doesn't become that dude, even the most ardent Tua defenders at some point have to stop the excuses and say, you know what, he's just not that guy, he just doesn't have it. And how nice that must be to have a front office, even somebody as incompetent generally like Chris Greer, to be able to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to draft a Jalen Waddle, and then I'm going to make a big trade for a Tyreek Hill. We've got a Mike Gesicki there. We've invested and brought in a Chase Edmonds in the offseason, brought in a Teron Armstead. You put pieces in place around your young quarterback, and that way you can find out what the hell you have, which is exactly how you should be building a team in the modern NFL, especially when you have a high first-round pick at quarterback on a rookie contract. Meanwhile, you look at somewhere like frickin' Hallis Hall, the Bears. Look at the half-ass effort they put in putting help around a goddamn Justin Fields. This is how you help out your young quarterback. Give them talent to work with. Nobody should have to go it alone. And in the case of Miami, not only you talk about the players that they brought in, but they got rid of the dipshit Brian Flores and brought in somebody that actually knows how to do things on the offensive side of the ball, and Mike McDaniel. And look at the Dolphins. They're 2-0, and people are optimistic about Tua, this offense, and the Dolphins' chances this season. Get a young quarterback and build around him. It's not that hard of a concept. And it pays off big when you do it right.